welcome back. This is the Book Mavens channel. I'm Amanda, and as we mentioned in a previous video, Rachel and I are both traveling separately for the summer. So we had talked about what we're going to read on vacation, so we wanted to give you guys an update on our thoughts on all those books that we read. So we both were able to take a couple weeks off right after the end of school and have some downtime. So my plans kind of changed a little bit, but I still was able to read lots. So I'm just gonna dive right in. I started with Only a Monster. Wow, this book was really good. Okay, it did, I'll admit, it started a little slow for me. But then, wham bam, we're in it. The premise of the book is that she discovers that she is a monster, that monsters and heroes are real, and that she's a monster, and they steal time from humans, which allows them to time travel. Okay. This book was so good, and I did not realize that it's going to be a series until I was very close to the end, and I was like, please tell me this isn't how it ends. It isn't. The author, Vanessa Lynn, has recently, I saw an interview that she did that she said she was working on the sequel to this book right now. And oh my goodness, I'm excited. I will say, unlike a typical cliffhanger ending, it does resolve the story. Now, there is clearly more of the tale that can be told, but I'm also kind of fine with the wait. Even with the bittersweet ending that was here, the moral of the tale, the integrity of the characters, their development is still all very authentically there. And this book was so good and so original. I don't really know how to put it into words. I have never read a premise like this before, and it was delightful and unexpected, and the twists, some of them I kind of saw coming, and some of them I really didn't. So I highly recommend Only a Monster. Now, this one was actually a Bookish Box special edition. So it's actually signed, and it has these beautiful sprayed purple edges. I mean, it's kind of, I will admit, a little bit plain for a Bookish Box book. I mean, I've seen some ones they do, but this is one of their YA books, but I actually really like it because it's beautiful, but not in a way that made me not like scared to read it, which if you've ever watched our video on special editions is actually generally my problem with special editions, is that I'm scared to touch them because they're so pretty. But this book, beautiful edition, beautiful story, highly recommend. Okay, after that I read, I'm a big mystery fan. I tried the Marlow Murder Club. Okay, the protagonist is a 77-year-old woman, Judith Potts, and she basically kind of goes around collecting these, forgotten's not the right word, maybe overlooked. She goes about kind of collecting these overlooked women in their village as she tries to solve the murder of her neighbor. The murder mystery in of itself, the whodunit, well written. The pace was really nice. I like that the characters, all of the women were uniquely different and like a little bit quirky, but in a way that was really endearing. And I'm not gonna lie to you, the twist for me was not the mystery, it was the bomb that Judith drops, like just real casual right there at the end while they're punting down the river. And I still haven't decided honestly how I feel about it. I think I would give this another go. If this series was to continue with her and this group of ladies, I think I would give it the next one a read. So this one, if there's more, which I actually haven't even looked to see if there is yet, I would read another one. And so the twist for me was from the character's backstory, not from the actual mystery. But honestly, a delightful read. I really enjoyed it. Okay, then I had said that I was gonna read This Cozy, but to be honest, I wasn't in the mood for it. So I still haven't actually read this yet. Although my prediction, I'm still sticking to my prediction that she's not gonna fall for the suitcase guy, she's gonna fall for the other. I'm just gonna leave that there. So this is going back on my to be read shelf because I wasn't in the mood. Okay, I'll admit. I started it and I honestly just wasn't feeling it. And it was nothing to do with the story. It was just a mood read moment. I just was not in the mood for it. So instead, I picked up this off my TBR, The Living and the Lost by Ellen Feldman. This book was really beautiful and really harsh and poignant and just stunning in a lot of ways. So it's set in occupied Berlin after World War II. And so the protagonist, she goes by Millie. Millie is attached to the U.S. Army, and she works, so it's basically she works for the military during the occupations as they are trying to monitor and set the rules, basically, as Germany is reestablishing itself. So there's a lot of historical research that's gone into the book that is reflective of a time period that I think a lot of people don't think about, is like the immediate aftermath of war. So like the immediate aftermath of peace and how messy and complicated that is, and the emotions of going from these, like, you've dehumanized your enemy on both sides. That's essentially how psychologically humans process war, is that we dehumanize the enemy so that we can, you know, essentially live with what we're doing. But then you sign a piece of paper and you're suddenly at peace. So it's like the process of unraveling that. And the characters have their own complicated histories coming out of that war trauma. And Millie's family is Jewish, and she and her brother escaped to the U.S. when they were children. And so there's a lot of emotional trauma to process through. The other main characters that she's interacting with also have trauma that they're all trying to process. And it's really harsh and stark, but also something really terribly beautiful about it all, about how we learn to live with ourselves and the choices that we've made and the circumstances that we find ourselves in and how we move forward. And it's a really, I would recommend this book. It's really beautiful. Yeah, it's a really beautiful book. The Living and the Lost, Ellen Feldman. Highly recommend. Okay, and then I guess kind of on that same vein of emotional processing, I read Friedrich Bachmann's Anxious People, and I actually just finished it a few minutes ago before filming. I just love him. Let me tell you what I love about Friedrich Bachmann. What it is he finds these, he writes these characters that feel utterly ordinary, and yet in the utter ordinariness of their lives are these deep truths about what it means to be a human. And at the beginning of the book, the characters are so frustrating. You are like, they are the worst. And then as you come to know their story, you come to understand them and soften to them in a way that I think is really authentic, because it's so easy to judge strangers. But the more we know of someone's backstory, the more compassion we can find. It's just beautifully written. And there are so many moments that are just hilarious. The whole premise is around this like hostage experience, this bank robber. The bank robbery goes wrong. And they end up holding hostage these people who are viewing an apartment to buy. So they all find them, like, first they were in competition for the apartment, and now they're all trapped together in this hostage situation. And then it's kind of how that story unravels. And it's delightful. It's delightful. I did find it did not make me like boohoo sob. Some people told me that it was like really going to get me in my feels. And I didn't like boohoo sob, but it definitely had moments where I like underlined phrases that I'm going to want to think about again, because they're just really deep and they really speak to you. So I always recommend Friedrich Bachmann's books, but this one was, I think, really timely for where we are. It is about anxiety. It's about the way our brains kind of conspire against us sometimes to make us view situations in a way that's not accurate. And honestly, it just feels really timely. As always, highly recommend. So good. And the last book that I had said I was going to read, I haven't actually finished yet. I've only actually just started, but I didn't want to delay the video. I had started this nonfiction book, American Dialogue American Dialogue, The Founding Fathers and Us. It's going to be a slow read only because, like with most nonfiction, I like to go a little bit slower because I'm processing the information. So right now I'm in, the way that it's broken up is it takes a topic or an issue of debate today. Honestly, they've all been debates forever. That's the premise of how this book works. But because they've been debates forever, it looks at then, like the way that some of the founding fathers wrote about them then. So like George Washington's section is on American imperialism. So it talks a lot about historical context of what Washington wrote about imperialism in the American context of its time. And then the next section is on now, how that would be, how his words are interpreted and applied now, the way that his arguments are viewed in the context of today. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. So you can kind of read it in sections as you read each topic with each founding father's work. I mean, obviously through the interpretive lens of the author, the way they've gathered the research. But it is it is very well cited, which I always appreciate. I love when they name their sources. So, like for example, this is all the footnotes. Like all of this is the footnotes, the citation and the citations in the index, which I always appreciate when you name your source. As a research teacher, big fan. So this one I'm still kind of working my way through. This will probably be one that I like read as I read other things, because it's not really like a sit down and go through a book. It's a read a little bit and think about it kind of book. So I'm still working on this one. But I have lots more on my TBR, but now I'm kind of back into the regular flow of things and, you know, don't have quite as much free time as I did while I was on vacation. So I hope wherever you are, you've had a lovely vacation. And Rachel will be on the channel next week talking about her vacation reads and her experience in Greece, which I know we are all pumped to hear about. But otherwise, like and subscribe, tell your friends. If you have read any of these books, please tell me what you think. Especially Only a Monster. I would love to talk about Only a Monster with somebody because I don't know anybody who's read it yet. But I need to talk about it. So if you've read it, please drop a comment below. Let me know. I'd love to hear what you thought about this book or any of the other books. See you next time. Bye.